Welcome back everyone. In this video we're going to look at the environments which we've covered before, so the internal and external environments, but how they can actually be a source for organisational change. So how do they actually put pressure on organisations to change, and it's an organisation's job or the manager's job to really adapt to those changes. And remember, we want to be proactive rather than reactive, but it's how they react to these possible changes, these sources of change. So one, we'll start off with the internal environment. And one is clearly poor financial performance. That's going to cause an organisation to change some things. An example of that is Sanity. When they listed on the stock exchange, they had some poor financial performance, and that led them to look at their business model, and what they decided to do was close down a lot of their stores and move more to online. And they also moved not away from music, but they also started to include DVDs and Blu-ray discs. So that was another market that they decided to go down because of some poor financial performance. Crisis. Organisations go through different crises at different times. So one of the biggest in history has been Johnson & Johnson and their Tylenol products. So this was more in the United States rather than Australia, but one of the problems that they had was that someone had tampered with the Tylenol and laced the tablets with a poison, and I think it was 7 people died. So what they did, they spent millions of dollars retrieving everything, and then it made them to change their packaging, so that their packaging was actually, that's where sealed products came into place, and so that you knew if you bought the product and it had been tampered with, you knew that that it couldn't be tampered with. Culture. So Zappos, we've spoken about Zappos before, and how they changed their culture to make it more based on customer service. So that the CEO had worked in an organisation where he didn't like the culture, and so he built a whole new business based purely on culture. And there's a couple of others, such as policies. David Jones, when they went through the sexual harassment case a few years ago now, they decided to actually strengthen its complaints handling department. So the policies and procedures that they went through there actually changed because of that pressure. Now, if we look at the operating environment, remember this operating is part of the external environment. External is the operating in the macro environment. So obviously customers can be a major source for change. They're ensuring the future profitability of the organisation, I suppose. So it's important to keep up, that an organisation keeps up with latest trends of what customers actually want. I mean, fashion is a big player in that. They need to be constantly changing because people's interests and how they feel about fashion changes. So that's important that they keep up to date with that. And obviously they're proactive as well, so they can often drive those changes. Competitors are obviously a major source of change. So Google came along when Microsoft was so big, and then all of a sudden the way people search then became very different, and Bing had to try and compete with that, so it changed the way they ran their business. Suppliers and interest groups are some other forces of change for the operating environment. So suppliers, organisations need to be on the lookout for new suppliers, whether they be socially responsible suppliers or cheaper suppliers, but also backup suppliers, so that you're not out of stock, just in case one of your suppliers becomes out of stock of a particular product or can't deliver on an order, that you have a backup supplier. So that's constant. And interest groups are things like trade unions and things like that. So from the macro environment, we go through some of the areas that we've been through before when we looked at the the different environments. So first of all, economic. Obviously, the global financial crisis in 2008, that changed the way many organisations operated. They all of a sudden couldn't go into as much debt. They realised that they couldn't leverage themselves the way they were, and then obviously people had less money because people were losing their jobs, etc. So things like recessions have a major impact on organisations, and then how they adapt to that and what they need to change in order to adapt to that. Political and legal, any law that changes, it can be, so we're in an election period now where we're looking for government, if we have a change of government, does that mean that the employee relations system will change? So, it changed when the last government came in, it changed when the previous government before that came in, so will it change this time? And if it does, then organisations have to adapt to that and they have to change that to meet those policies. And then technology, which we've covered plenty of times before, any, like changes in technological forces that impacts an organisation to change. Global forces, globalisation, organisations these days in Australia are part of a global market because of the way technology and communication has allowed it to do. And then social forces about, the way customers or us as a society in general are wanting to be more socially responsible. We're looking for emissions trading schemes. We're looking for organisations that don't hurt the environment, etc. So it's organisations need to adapt to that also. So for even more resources to help you improve your understanding of today's topic, then always come over to teachingbubble.com.